You know what's hilarious about being the most peaceful species in the galaxy? Everyone assumes you're stupid. I mean, absolutely. Brain-dead stupid. Like, oh, look at the pretty glowing creatures who wouldn't hurt a subatomic particle kind of stupid. Asterisk, psi, asterisk. Let me tell you how that worked out for everyone involved. My name is Lyra V, and I'm what you'd call a Luminara. Yes, we're the ones who look like we swallowed a lava lamp and had a baby with the northern lights. We've spent the last 15,000 years perfecting the art of diplomatic negotiations, meditation, and making tea that literally brings tears of joy to most species, except the silicon-based ones who just get a bit crunchy. But here's the thing about being peaceful. It doesn't mean we're blind, deaf, or lacking in the common sense department. The day the Kraxon Empire showed up in our space, all tentacles and titanium warships, I was sitting in my meditation pod trying to achieve what we call the seventh harmony of enlightenment. Between you and me, it's really just our way of saying we're taking a nap while looking professional. The emergency lights started pulsing, which, for a species that communicates partially through bioluminescence, is the equivalent of someone screaming directly into your brain. Ambassador Lyra V, my assistant Zinpo burst into the chamber, their crystalline form flickering between shades of panic purple and oh shit orange. The Galactic Council requests your immediate presence. The Kraxon, they're... Let me guess, I pulse back, my own bioluminescence shifting to a sardonic blue. They're doing what every supposedly superior species does when they discover a peaceful civilization, trying to prove their dominance by threatening us with their big, impressive ships. Zinpo's crystals clinked in agreement. They have positioned 37 warships in a standard intimidation formation. They're broadcasting their demands across all frequencies. I stood up, smoothing down my diplomatic robes, which were specifically designed to amplify our natural glow. Have they started with the submit or be destroyed speech yet, or are they still in the we come as harbingers of a new order phase? They're actually doing both simultaneously, Zinpo admitted, their confusion evident in the swirling patterns across their surface. Overachievers, how delightful. I made my way to the council chambers, my bioluminescence deliberately set to a calm, professional white, the equivalent of a poker face for my species. The Galactic Council chamber was chaos when I arrived. Representatives from 27 species were all trying to speak at once. The methane breathers were releasing stress gases that were making the crystalline collective vibrate uncomfortably. The Silicon Confederacy was literally grinding their teeth, which, when you're made of living rock, sounds about as pleasant as you'd expect. And there on the main viewing screen was Admiral Krax himself, a mass of writhing tentacles decorated with military badges, somehow managing to look both smug and threatening. And as the superior military force in this sector, he was saying, his translation matrix giving his words an artificial gravitas, we demand immediate submission from all species, particularly from the Luminara, whose pathetic dedication to peace makes them unworthy of their position in the Galactic Council. I cleared my throat, or what passes for one in our species, and stepped forward. Every eye, optical sensor, and sensory appendage turned to me. My species had held the role of chief negotiators and peacekeepers in the galaxy for millennia. They were expecting wise words, calming platitudes, perhaps a suggestion for meditation and conflict resolution. Instead, I let my bioluminescence shift to the particular shade of azure that, in our culture, is reserved for moments of extreme done with this nonsense. Admiral Krax, I said, my translator rendering my bioluminescent pulses into standard galactic common. I notice you've brought 37 ships to this diplomatic meeting. Tell me, did you lose the rest of your fleet, or is this just what passes for a proper hello in your culture? The chamber went silent. Even the methane breathers stopped their stress farting. And that, my friends, is how I accidentally started the chain of events that would lead the most peaceful species in the galaxy to join forces with the most surprising allies anyone could have imagined. Humans, but we'll get to that part. First, let me tell you about Admiral Krax's face when he realized that peaceful doesn't mean pushover. Admiral Krax's tentacles did this fascinating little dance of rage when I called him out. You haven't lived until you've seen a Kraxon military leader try to maintain their dignity while looking like an angry octopus at a disco. You dare mock the might of the Kraxon Empire, he thundered, which would have been more impressive if his translation matrix hadn't glitched and made his voice sound like he'd been huffing helium. I maintained my professional azure glow. Mock? Never. I'm simply impressed by your dedication to, what shall we call it, aggressive tourism. Before Admiral Krax could respond with what I'm sure would have been a very creative threat involving several star systems and possibly my personal molecular structure, the chamber doors burst open. The methane breathers started stress farting again, creating a lovely potpourri of tension and toxic gas. "Sorry we're late to the party," came a voice that managed to sound both completely professional and utterly sarcastic. "Traffic was murder. You wouldn't believe how many warships were double parked in the approach vector." The human delegation had arrived. Now, I'd heard of humans, of course, everyone had. They were the galaxy's newest spacefaring civilization, having somehow managed to go from splitting atoms to splitting solar systems in what most species considered a criminally short amount of time. But this was my first time seeing one in person. Ambassador Devon Mitchell strode into the chamber like they owned it, wearing what I later learned was called a three-piece suit, and a smile that reminded me of our predatory flowers back home. Beautiful but definitely hiding teeth. Admiral Krax's tentacles went rigid. "What is the meaning of this? The humans have no standing in the Galactic Council." Actually, Mitchell said, pulling out what appeared to be an ancient datapad. Paper, they called it. "According to Article 7, Subsection 3 of the Galactic Charter, any species facing an imminent threat from a hostile force can petition for emergency membership. And would you look at that? Your lovely fleet just happened to pass through 3 of our colonial systems on their way here. Funny coincidence, isn't it?" I found my bioluminescence shifting to intrigued indigo without my conscious control. The humans had deliberately positioned their colonies to force a confrontation that would give them council access. That was absolutely brilliant. "This is outrageous." Krax's tentacles were now moving so fast they were creating their own wind current. "The Kraxon Empire demands—" Yes, Mitchell interrupted, waving a hand dismissively. "Submit or be destroyed. Bow before your new overlords. Resistance is futile." Did I miss anything? I was trying to keep track, but I ran out of space on my generic villain threats bingo card. I couldn't help it. I pulsed a pattern of amused amber that made several of my fellow council members gasp in shock. The human noticed, and for a brief moment, our eyes met. They winked at me. I still wasn't sure what that meant, but I assumed it was either friendly or they had something in their eye and were too professional to rub it. The next few hours were interesting. The humans presented evidence of Kraxon aggression across multiple sectors, delivered with a combination of meticulous detail and what they called stand-up comedy. The Kraxon delegation became increasingly agitated, especially when Mitchell started referring to their warships as oversized space Roombas with anger management issues. During a brief recess, I found myself sharing a quiet moment with the human ambassador in one of our meditation gardens. "Your species," I said carefully, "has a unique approach to diplomacy." Mitchell grinned. "You mean we don't shut up and take it when someone tries to bully us?" "I was going to say you have an interesting way of combining truth and provocation, but yes, that too. You know what I've noticed about your people, Ambassador Liravi?" They gestured at my still slightly amused amber glow. "You're not just peaceful, you're peaceful because you choose to be. There's a difference." I felt my colors shift to contemplative cayenne. Most species don't notice that distinction. Most species don't spend their first council meeting antagonizing a hostile empire while simultaneously filing 17 different procedural motions to legally trap them in their own aggressive posturing. They paused. "I counted your subtle legislative proposals during the session. 18, actually, if we count the one hidden in that lovely metaphor about space flowers." I allowed myself to pulse a pattern of surprised silver. "You noticed that?" "Ambassador, I think our species have a lot more in common than anyone realizes. We both understand that sometimes the best way to maintain peace is to be really, really good at understanding war." Before I could respond, the chamber's alert system began blaring. The Kraxon Empire had just issued their final ultimatum. Either the Council surrendered within the next standard cycle, or they would demonstrate their new weapon on a populated system. Mitchell's grin turned predatory. "Would you look at that? They're right on schedule." "Schedule?" I asked, my confusion showing in waves of purple light. "Oh yes, tell me, Ambassador, How do your people feel about helping us spring a trap that's been about 6 months in the making? I promise it'll be both peaceful and exceptionally satisfying. And that's when I realized why humans and Luminara might just be the perfect team. We both understood that true peace isn't about avoiding conflict. It's about being smart enough to end it before it begins, even if that means occasionally making an angry octopus alien have a complete meltdown in front of the entire Galactic Council. Ambassador Mitchell, I pulsed in my most diplomatic pattern. I believe this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Did you just quote Casablanca at me? I have no idea what that means. I was quoting ancient Luminaran philosophy. You're messing with me, aren't you? My bioluminescence shifted to innocent white. I have no idea what you mean. We Luminara are known for our complete and total honesty. Mitchell laughed. Oh, this is going to be fun. They had no idea just how right they were. Here's the thing about working with humans. They have this fascinating ability to turn anything into either a joke or a weapon. Sometimes both. Usually both. While the Kraxon Empire was busy congratulating themselves on their fearsome ultimatum, Mitchell and I were holed up in what the humans called a war room, which was really just my meditation chamber with a bunch of holographic displays, making it look like a hyperactive nebula having a seizure. So, Mitchell said, munching on something they called a protein bar, which based on its appearance I suspect was actually construction material, want to see what the angry space octopi have been hiding. My bioluminescence flickered with curiosity as they pulled up a series of images. The humans, it turned out, had been doing more than just coincidentally placing colonies in the Kraxon's path. They'd been gathering intelligence, very, very detailed intelligence. Is that? My lights pulsed in shock. A quantum displacement cannon? Yep, well, their attempt at one. They've clearly never figured out how to stabilize the containment field properly. See this energy signature? They pointed to a reading that made my outer membrane ripple with concern. That's going to create a cascade failure if they try to fire it at full power, I noted, my scientific background kicking in. The quantum harmonics are completely misaligned. Mitchell paused mid-bite. Wait, you can tell that just by looking at it. I pulsed a pattern of mild amusement. We Luminara didn't achieve peace by being ignorant about the physics of things that go boom, Ambassador. We simply choose not to make them go boom ourselves. Huh, they looked at me with new respect. So when your people say make love, not war, we actually mean we understand war so well we found better alternatives. Also, your translator just rendered that phrase in a way that suggested some very inappropriate things about particle physics and quantum entanglement. Mitchell choked on their construction material protein bar. The next few hours were filled with cultural exchanges that I'm pretty sure violated several laws of comedy. The humans tried to teach us their military hand signals, not realizing that when a bioluminescent species tries to mimic them, we basically turn into a living disco ball. In return, we attempted to teach them our subtle color-based emotional communications, which led to Mitchell spending 10 minutes trying to make their face turn blue before I explained that wasn't how it worked. So wait, they said after another translation mishap, when you said your people embrace the void, you didn't mean... We were talking about meditation techniques, yes, not whatever your translator suggested about airlocks and creative solutions to diplomatic problems. That actually makes a lot more sense. But between the mishaps and misunderstandings, we were making progress. The humans' intelligence combined with our deep understanding of energy physics painted a clear picture. The Kraxon weren't just incompetent with their superweapon, they were dangerously incompetent. If they try to fire that thing, I explained, my colors shifting to concerned crimson, they'll tear a hole in space-time roughly the size of... What's that Earth expression? A hot dam. Close enough, Mitchell grinned, but I'm betting they don't know that. Almost certainly not. Their understanding of quantum mechanics appears to be roughly equivalent to a juvenile Luminara's first attempt at bioluminescent poetry. That bad, sir? Let's just say it's the equivalent of trying to win a dance competition by setting yourself on fire. Technically impressive, but ultimately self-defeating. As we worked, I found myself developing a genuine appreciation for human methodology. They approached problems like a Luminara, who had decided to skip the meditation and go straight to the creative solution phase, but with a precision that belied their seemingly chaotic nature. You know, Mitchell said as we finalized our analysis, most species think humans are just reckless warriors who got lucky with technology. I pulsed a pattern of understanding. Most species think the Luminara are just pretty lights who got lucky with diplomacy. It's amazing how useful it can be when others underestimate you. Speaking of which, they pulled up a new hologram, this one showing the Kraxon fleet formations. Want to help me calculate exactly how their own weapon will backfire on them if they try to use it, purely as a peaceful scientific exercise. Of course, I agreed, my lights shifting to scholarly silver. It would be diplomatically irresponsible not to understand all possible outcomes. Ambassador Lirive, I do believe you just made a joke about weaponizing science while maintaining plausible deniability. I'm so proud. I have no idea what you mean. I am simply pursuing knowledge in accordance with my species' peaceful nature. I paused for effect. Also, your translator just rendered weaponizing science as making discovery go boom boom, which I feel really undermines the sophistication of this moment. Mitchell's laughter was interrupted by an urgent alert. The Kraxon were moving their fleet into attack position. Well, they said, their expression turning serious but maintaining that uniquely human gleam of mischief, shall we go explain physics to some angry cephalopods? My bioluminescence shifted to what humans would later call tactical tranquility. Indeed, after all, it would be remiss of us not to share our peaceful scientific observations about their imminent mistake. You're enjoying this way too much for a pacifist. I'm not enjoying it. I'm serenely contemplating the educational opportunity. Your lights just made a pattern that looks suspiciously like someone laughing. That was a diplomatic shimmer of professional concern. Sure it was, Ambassador, sure it was. The Kraxon Empire, bless their tentacled hearts, decided to try one last brilliant maneuver before launching their definitely not going to catastrophically backfire superweapon. They attempted to manipulate the Luminara, the species that literally invented diplomatic maneuvering while their ancestors were still figuring out which end of a spaceship went forward. Admiral Krax's hologram appeared in the council chamber, his tentacles arranged in what their cultural database suggested was a pose of benevolent wisdom. It actually made him look like he was trying to juggle invisible balls, but nobody told him that. Noble Luminara, he began, his voice dripping with so much synthetic sincerity that I worried it might short out the translation matrix. Surely you, as beings of peace, cannot align yourselves with the humans, a species known for their barbaric tendencies and love of conflict. Mitchell, standing beside me, whispered, "Did he just try to mean girl us at a galactic level?" My bioluminescence flickered in what humans would later term suppressed snark. "Admiral," I responded, my lights pulsing in perfect diplomatic patterns, "your concern for our spiritual well-being is touching." Several methane breathers snorted appreciatively at my tone. However, I feel compelled to point out that in the last standard cycle, humans have only participated in conflicts they were dragged into, usually by tentacled empires with delusions of adequacy. What? Krax's tentacles went from benevolent wise being to angry spaghetti in record time. Oh dear, did the translator malfunction again? Let me rephrase. We find humanity's approach to peace through preparedness quite illuminating. Mitchell barely contained their snort. Was that a light pun? I would never engage in such linguistic frivolity during a serious diplomatic crisis. I pulsed back, while simultaneously making my bioluminescence form patterns that made several junior Luminara diplomats choke on their meditation tea. That's when Krax played what he thought was his trump card. The hologram shifted to show what was supposedly evidence of human atrocities, carefully doctored footage that might have been convincing if A, we hadn't already tracked every human fleet movement for the past 6 months, and B, they hadn't accidentally left a tentacle in frame during their editing process. Wow, Mitchell deadpanned. I had no idea our ships could fly upside down while simultaneously being in 3 places at once. Our engineers will be thrilled to learn about this capability. I stepped forward, my bioluminescence shifting to what we call truth-telling white, a pattern so pure and bright it made several Kraxon officers squint. Admiral, let me share something about peace that you seem to have misunderstood. Peace isn't the absence of capability, it's the presence of wisdom. And that's when we sprung our trap. Now, Mitchell, I pulsed. The human ambassador hit a command on their datapad, and suddenly every screen in the council chamber lit up with our analysis of the Kraxon's weapon, complete with helpful annotations about exactly how it would spectacularly malfunction. You see, I continued as Krax's tentacles went from angry to panicked. While you were busy trying to manipulate us, we were calculating exactly how your quantum displacement cannon will create a recursive feedback loop in your own containment fields. Would you like to know the blast radius? We have charts. Humans love charts. They really do, Mitchell agreed cheerfully. We even color-coded this one. The red parts are where space-time goes all, what's the diplomatic term? Explosively non-linear, I supplied. Right, the technical term involved a lot more swearing. The Kraxon fleet, realizing their superweapon was about as super as a defective glow stick, did what any self-respecting would-be conquerors would do. They panicked and attacked anyway. What followed was possibly the most absurd space battle in galactic history. The humans, having anticipated this reaction, they called it the poke the bear strategy, although I'm still not clear on what a bear is, had positioned their fleet perfectly. Meanwhile, the Luminara, those supposedly helpless pacifists, were providing real-time tactical analysis of every Kraxon move before they made it. They're charging their secondary weapons array, I announced, reading the energy patterns like a children's book. Also, their formation suggests someone skipped basic geometry lessons. Mitchell cooed into the fleetcom channel. They're trying to do a pincer movement. That's adorable. Hey, watch this. I bet we can make them tangle their own ships if we execute Maneuver 7. The one you named Hold My Beer. No, the one we named Peace Through Superior Physics Understanding. Yes, much more diplomatic. The Kraxon ships, trying to execute a complex attack pattern, succeeded mainly in demonstrating why you shouldn't let your tactical officers learn formation flying from watching dance competitions. 3 of their destroyers nearly collided, trying to avoid a single human corvette that was, as Mitchell put it, doing a little trolling. But the real moment of truth came when they actually tried to fire their superweapon. There's something both horrifying and hilariously vindicating about watching your scientific predictions come true, especially when those predictions involve your enemy's secret weapon creating what one human scientist described as a physics hiccup. The quantum displacement cannon powered up, its energy readings making my bioluminescence flicker in anticipation. Every Luminara in the chamber began pulsing the equivalent of "I told you so" in increasingly creative patterns. "And should we tell them?" Mitchell asked, watching the power readings climb. "That would violate the prime diplomatic principle of letting others learn from their mistakes," I responded serenely. "Also, I believe the human phrase is, 'This is going to be good.'" The cannon fired. For a brief moment, space itself seemed to hold its breath. Then physics remembered it had laws for a reason, and the feedback loop we'd predicted hit the Kraxon fleet like karma, with a mathematics degree. The resulting spatial distortion turned their entire attack formation into what Mitchell later described as modern art made of bad decisions. No lives were lost, but I don't think those ships will ever fly in a straight line again. And that, I announced to the stunned council chamber, my bioluminescence radiating pure satisfaction, is why the Luminara believe in understanding the science of war while choosing peace. Also, Admiral Krax, your tentacles are tied in knots. You might want to see a medical professional about that. Mitchell raised their hand. Permission to say I told you so in 17 different languages? Granted, I pulsed back. But please avoid the Andorian dialect. Last time you tried that, you accidentally proposed marriage to a potted plant. As we watched the Kraxon fleet limp away, their ships moving like drunk geometric shapes, I realized something profound. Sometimes the most peaceful solution is having really, really good friends who know exactly when to help you make your point. Preferably with physics. The thing about making history is that everyone suddenly wants to explain how they totally saw it coming. The days following what humans gleefully dubbed the Great Space Pretzel Incident, referring to the new shape of several Kraxon ships, were filled with fascinating revisionist attempts by various species. We always knew the Luminara had hidden depths, the Silicon Confederacy representative declared, conveniently forgetting that just a week ago they'd suggested we combat the Kraxon by glowing at them really hard. The methane breathers at least were honest in their confusion. But you're pacifists, they kept bubbling. You're supposed to solve everything with meditation and that really good tea. Oh, we still do, I assured them, my bioluminescence radiating innocent serenity. We just also believe in having a very thorough understanding of exactly what we're choosing not to do. Mitchell, who had taken to hanging around the Luminara embassy for diplomatic reasons, they claimed, though I suspect it had more to do with our cafe's ability to make something approximating Earth coffee, found this endlessly amusing. You know what's really freaking them out, they said one day, watching various ambassadors try to subtly observe our species' interaction. It's not that we work together, it's that we're still working together. They had a point. The human Luminara cultural exchange program was proceeding at a pace that made other species nervous. We were teaching humans our advanced physics and diplomatic techniques. They were teaching us something called poker, which, as far as I could tell, was applied psychology with snacks. Did you see the Kraxon's latest diplomatic note? Mitchell asked, trying to mimic Luminara color patterns with varying degrees of success. Mostly, they just looked like they were having a very localized sunset. They're demanding to know how long we've been secretly collaborating. I pulsed a pattern of amusement. I particularly enjoyed their theory that humans must have been secretly uplifted by the Luminara centuries ago. Apparently, that's the only way they can explain how your species went from primitive savages to terrifying tactical geniuses so quickly. Should we tell them it's because both our species just really enjoy proving people wrong? That would violate the diplomatic principle of letting others maintain their comfortable illusions. I paused. Also, it's much more fun this way. The real irony, which the galaxy was slowly beginning to grasp, was that humans and Luminara worked so well together precisely because we were so different on the surface. Humans approached peace by being prepared for war. We approached war by being over-prepared for peace. The end result was surprisingly similar. You want to know the best part? Mitchell said, finally giving up on their attempt to glow and settling for just wearing a lot of reflective materials. Every other species is so busy trying to figure out our secret strategy that they're completely missing the obvious. That sometimes the best way to maintain peace is to be really, really good at anticipating trouble. Exactly. Also, I think your translator just rendered secret strategy as sneaky, glowing war dance, which honestly might be a better description. As if to prove our point, that afternoon we received word that 3 minor empires had suddenly discovered urgent diplomatic matters that required their immediate attention far, far away from both human and Luminara space. Apparently, the sight of the galaxy's most peaceful species and its newest spacefaring civilization, sharing tactical analysis over tea, was too much for their worldview to handle. You know what the funniest part is? I pulsed to Mitchell as we watched the latest diplomatic delegation rush to their ships. Everyone assumed that being peaceful meant we didn't understand strategy. They never considered that maybe we understand it too well. Which is why you chose peace in the first place. Precisely. Just as humans chose to be prepared for war because you understand the value of peace. Mitchell grinned. We should probably tell them that at some point. Oh, absolutely not, I pulsed back, my bioluminescence forming the pattern that humans had started calling the mischief lights. Let them keep thinking we're either secretly terrifying or terrifyingly secret. It's much more peaceful that way. And that's how the galaxy learned an important lesson about assumptions, strategy, and the true meaning of peace. Although, to be fair, they're still trying to figure out if they actually learned anything at all. Meanwhile, the Luminara and humans are working on something we call Project Peaceful Intentions, which is either a revolutionary new approach to galactic harmony or the galaxy's most elaborate inside joke. I'm not telling which. Peace through ambiguity works too, after all.